We get ready for a busy weekend with a preview of the Stanley Cup playoffs plus our WrestleMania preview. Couch Potato Diary starts now. Welcome, everyone, to Couch Potato Diary. Thank you all so much for hanging out today. This one, again, the live part of the intro, not necessarily bang on for our show today. A little bit all over the place this week, but still wanting to get all the episodes out. So today, we're going to be focusing on the Stanley Cup playoffs and WrestleMania weekend. Already looked at the NBA playoffs, plus a little bit from WrestleMania weekend with NXT Stand and Deliver preview. That is available wherever this is now. As always, we're presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for that great Calgary swag. All right, we got a lot to get to and not a lot of time to do it. So let's dive right in with our Stanley Cup playoff preview, starting with the teams that are under the most pressure heading into the big tournament. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here, and with that comes a lot of pressure for everyone, but some more than others. So let's take a look at who is facing the most pressure as we head into the postseason. We will begin with the Toronto Maple Leafs, forever and always under pressure, but now there's a bit of a timeline on it, and it will probably be extended. But for now, this is an organization that has some big decisions to make in the next little bit. They have massive contracts coming up with Marner and Tavares, them being free agents at the end of the year. They won the division, so I'm not saying pressure's off, but this group has been together for a very long time, and they've made basically every change you can around them. Now it's time for them to actually do this, or big changes could be coming. So with Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares, you could throw Riley in there as well. The path really has never been more clear, all due respect to Ottawa, but it has always been just an absolute grind of a first-round series for Toronto to get through, and generally they don't. So this time now, they are facing Ottawa, who they, talent-wise, should stack up with pretty well. And then after that, Florida and Tampa Bay, whoever is coming out of that series, is going to have just beat the hell out of each other. So it should be not an easy series, but a little bit at least beneficial to them. So the pressure, I think now, because of how the bracket sets up and just because of where this team is at in the kind of development of the franchise, there's a lot of pressure on these guys. Up next, I have the Washington Capitals. They do have that Stanley Cup win, and there does feel like a little bit of playing with house money, but also you have one of the greatest players of all time still playing at a very high level. You need to take advantage of that. So I think that there is quite a bit of pressure on the Washington Capitals to take advantage of this momentum when you have it, because we know Ovi is not going to be there forever. It kind of feels like he might, but probably not. So you have, again, number one seed. You have a superstar playing at an extremely high level. This is your time to go out and try to take advantage of this situation. The Winnipeg Jets, I have also as a team under immense pressure this season. They have been good for a while, and the playoff results have not been there. So now, this is one where the reason I don't have them up like right beside Toronto is because their guys, for the most part, like Ehlers, but for the most part, their guys are under contract for a little bit anyway. But they just won the President's Trophy. Last year's postseason was a disaster. And so if this one is that again, then I think some really, really hard questions are going to be asked out in Winnipeg. And the last one is the Oilers. Got to within a win of the Stanley Cup final, of the Stanley Cup last year. And again, generational talent on your team. Couple very good players on your team, and we have now seen that one of them can be, both of them at times, can be just simply brilliant. Again, take advantage of that while you can, and that has not necessarily been a strong suit for Edmonton over the last little bit. So, a lot of pressure on, again, everyone. It's the Stanley Cup playoffs, but I think those four teams are under the most amount of pressure heading into the playoffs. Let's run through now the Stanley Cup playoff preview. I think we have a lot of very good matchups here in the Stanley Cup playoffs, so let's go series by series and break them all down, shall we? The Stanley Cup playoffs are here, and with that comes, I think, a lot of intrigue as we have some pretty good series here in round number one. Let's start with the All-Canadian matchup in the Eastern Conference, as the Ottawa Senators, really good story, taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And honestly, Ottawa, while being a wildcard team, I do think is a team that needs to be taken seriously. Allmark can steal a game, and I do think Brady Tkachuk just has it in him to just say, hey, you know what? Don't feel like losing today, so we're not going to lose. And we saw that at the Four Nations, what he can do. A lot of the secondary stats actually do point Ottawa's way when you look at Corsi for percentage, excuse me, expected goals for percentage. Both of those went to Ottawa this year, and they were 3-0 against the Maple Leafs. But really, when you look at kind of how these teams stack up, Toronto still should win this series. Toronto has, I think, with all due respect to Ottawa, because I like this Ottawa team quite a bit, but Toronto just has more talent than they do, and not by an insignificant margin, I don't believe. So when you look at how this can all stack up, that should win the day. The big key is going to be in goal. Stolarz has been really good for the Leafs in the back part of the season here, but we've seen that before. Right? Like we have seen oh yeah, no, everything's fine. Everything's going all right. He is locked in on this. And then it doesn't go well for them. So I think that is obviously, like if that happens, then they're screwed. Sorry. I'm very choked up about it, apparently. But I do think that overall, Toronto wins this series. I think that there will be a moment where it's like, oh no, like this series is tied at 2. Like what are we doing here? Ultimately, I think the Leafs prevail. I have Toronto in 6, which you can get, by the way, at plus 415. Another little prop that I like on this one, I have Matthew Tkachuk at over 2.5 goals right now at plus 125. Moving to another this one, instead of interprovincial, it is interstate, as it is the Tampa Bay Lightning as the 2 seed in the Atlantic, getting home ice advantage against the Florida Panthers going into that matchup. Both of these teams, a ton of experience. Both of these teams have a bunch of game changers on their team, difference makers, if you will, and both teams have guys that can play at just a very, very, very high level. Again, the fancy stats do go the way of Tampa Bay, but the Florida Panthers dealing with injury issues and things like that this season, their secondary numbers I don't think really express how good this team will be as this series goes along. This series is going to be absolutely incredible. I can't wait. I do think that the difference is going to be Florida getting Matthew Tkachuk and Aaron Ekblad back at some point in this series. So I just feel like, again, the talent on Florida just slightly outweighs that of the Tampa Bay Lightning. But this series is going to be great. I have it Panthers in 7, which you can get right now at plus 500. The Washington Capitals taking on the Montreal Canadiens. Washington, if you go back to our preview episode, really liked Montreal and had them as a playoff team, so that took the scenic route to get there, but that ended up being a pretty good call on our end, and a profitable one, if you will. But Washington, now that we're here, Washington's a better hockey team, right? Like the Capitals offense, obviously a lot focused on Ovechkin, but they have a few guys that can put the puck in the net, and just overall, I feel like the Habs are a step behind the Capitals in every way. Montreal has a lot that you can be excited about, but the Capitals have a lot of guys that are just quite good. So I think Washington ends up coming out on the winning side of this. I actually have the Caps sweeping. I have Washington in 4, which you can get right now at plus 600. Carolina taking on the New Jersey Devils. I don't think the Canes get enough credit for how good they are. I didn't like how they handled the offseason for one, although I do think they recovered pretty well. I didn't love how they handled the Rantanen situation for this time of year. I think that they could use a Rantanen still. But this is still a very good hockey team. They had the best Corsi for percentage in the National Hockey League this season, as well as the best expected goals for percentage. The Devils were top 10 in both of those as well. They've been beaten up quite a bit as of late. The real key in this one is Carolina's goaltending is not a situation that you can trust. But I don't know if the Devils is either. They go out and acquire Jacob Markstrom in the offseason. He got hurt in January. He comes back in March, and it has not been great. Results-wise, I think it's 5-7-1, but that save percentage was at 868. So not ideal, especially going into a series against a Carolina team that has the amount of firepower that they do. So if these two teams were healthy, I think this series would be really good, and I think that the Devils would be very competitive, but they're not. So I don't think they will be. I think Carolina makes a bit of a statement, honestly, in this series with a victory in 5 games, which you can get at plus 300. So that is the story from the Eastern Conference. But what about out west? Let's break it all down as we continue our preview of the Stanley Cup playoffs. We continue our breakdown of the Stanley Cup playoffs with a look at the NHL's Western Conference, which gives us just a few heavyweight tilts. We'll start with Winnipeg taking on the St. Louis Blues. The Jets looking to stay hot after a pretty dominant regular season, just a phenomenal start to the year. I'm not going to say coasted from there because they got quite a bit of push in a very competitive division, but they end up convincingly winning the President's Trophy this year, while the St. Louis Blues are one of the hottest teams in the National Hockey League in the last month and a bit, getting into the playoffs on a high note. The big question in this series is Connor Hellebuyck. If he is good, Winnipeg should have no problem here. If Hellebuyck ends up seeing some of the ghosts of playoffs past, then this St. Louis team is ready to pull off that kind of an upset. They have the high-end talent that can do it. They have a goalie who has shown at the highest of levels that he can go on a bit of a heater, and I think that they could put some real pressure on the Jets. I don't see that happening. I like the St. Louis team. I don't love the St. Louis team. I really like Winnipeg. I feel like the center depth is going to catch up to them at some point. I don't think it's here. I think the Jets take this one in 6, which you can get at plus 365. Dallas taking on the Colorado Avalanche. Dallas getting Rantanen makes this series a whole lot of fun, but no Heiskanen does take a lot of the fun out of it, and Robertson probably not going to play in this series either. So it does take a little bit of the juice out of this one, while Colorado, they also made some very smart moves around the trade deadline, going out and getting Coyle and Nelson, and now maybe Landeskog. So all of a sudden, they have a center position where you are feeling very comfortable, and just a forward group in general that you are feeling very comfortable with in terms of depth and in terms of the high-end quality as well. Again, it comes down to goaltending here. Ottinger is someone who can steal not just a game. Ottinger can steal a series. He almost did it here in Calgary a couple of years ago, and he has been getting better since then. He is a guy who can go out and do that sort of thing. Colorado doesn't have that. They have the opposite. They have goaltending that could cost you a series. So that can dramatically swing things one way or the other, and it is a gigantic checkmark in Dallas's favor, but I think given the health of both teams, it's the only checkmark in Dallas's favor. So I'm going to go Colorado in 6 at plus 400. The Vegas Golden Knights taking on the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota really struggled with injuries down the stretch, so they limp into the playoffs. There's a lot of talent on this team, and so I do think, just watching them down the stretch, there was a lot of shots that were trying to be perfect and either just missing the net or hitting the post and stuff like that. I do think it's odd because it's the playoffs, but I do think just getting in gives them a bit of a moment that lets them just, okay, we're here now, we can play our game. And so I think we see a very competitive series, but Vegas has the experience. They also have a good team. There is some concern about secondary scoring in this series, that this is not the stacked Vegas team that we are used to. High-end wise, they are good, although Eichel and Stone, they didn't play in Calgary for a reason. They're a little bit on the banged-up side, so we will see what you get out of them. And then after that, there's not a ton. Carlson at this point is more a defensive guy, and Pearson is, you're relying a lot on him if the big guys aren't scoring. So that is a way. There's a chance Kaprizov is the best player in this series, and Minnesota has a chance to upset the apple cart a little bit. I don't think that catches up to Vegas here. I think that they kind of make a bit of a statement in this series. I do think, while I like this Minnesota team quite a bit, and I think the future is very bright, I have Vegas winning this one in 5 at plus 350. And our last one here, breaking it all down, I have the Kings taking on the Edmonton Oilers. I think that this is the year that the Kings get the job done against Edmonton. I think we talked about it a bit on this show. This offseason, going into this year, is going to prove, I think, to be the fatal flaw of this team. Obviously, the high-end talent is there for Edmonton. But the secondary scoring just is not where it was a season ago to get through the grind of the playoffs. And now missing Ekholm, and Skinner has just not had the consistent season that you would like from him. So I just have those worries about Edmonton that it's just a lot of what helped last year. Obviously, the big thing was Connor McDavid, and he's still there. But a lot of the other things that really helped get them to that 7th game in the Stanley Cup final isn't there anymore. And this LA Kings team is silly good right now. They've won 8 of their last 9 going into the postseason by a score of 42-16. 17-4 since the deadline. Less than 3 goals scored just 6 times in 21 games down the stretch. We knew they could defend. Then they add Kuzmenko, and I'm not saying that's the only thing that's done it, but they add Kuzmenko, and now this team offensively is just dynamite. And so I feel like this is a very complete team and a very dangerous team, and I think they are finally catching Edmonton at a good time in the postseason. So I have the Kings pulling off the upset. I have Kings in 6, which you can get at plus 600. But I can't wait. NBA playoffs, we did that yesterday. Hockey playoffs, doing it today. The next couple of months, sports watching are going to be incredible. We have some great matchups in both brackets that are going to be really, really, really fun to watch. That not the only thing happening this weekend, though. It is WrestleMania time in the world of professional wrestling. Going to continue our WrestleMania weekend coverage now, looking at a bit of a different way to do the predictions. We're going to break it up into 2 parts. One is what I think they'll do, but we'll start with what I would do. It's the fantasy booking portion of the WrestleMania preview here on Couch Potato Diary. WrestleMania weekend provides so many different options, possibilities, great memories, even just going back 1 year ago to WrestleMania 40, and how can you not be romantic about professional wrestling? So this year, while we have a gigantic main event at the end, a lot to break down with this one, and so breaking it up into a couple of parts. We have, a little bit later on, we're going to have what I think they'll do, but right now, we're going to focus on what I would do. This is my fantasy booking. If all of a sudden Triple H called me up and was like, hey man, what are we doing? This is all what I would say with him. So a little bit of fantasy booking here. First of all, the Randy Orton aspect of it, I'm recording this before SmackDown. I would have him face Nick Aldis. I think that Aldis is someone whose resume deserves to have WrestleMania on it. I think that it is the closest to having a ready-made anything with it. And I think that it is a very, very exciting prospect here. Also, this is me overthinking things. I don't think it's nothing that NWA is putting out some stuff with Natty Neidhart and what she did at GCW last night. So I feel like there's a little, because that's where a lot of the, like you would have the tape library from TNA that you could use, but if we're nuzzled up there with the NWA, then all of a sudden we got a lot of Nick Aldis footage that we can use with him carrying around the 10 pounds of gold and all of that. So I would do that one. Now we're into the night one, official ones here. Gunther against Jey Uso for the World Heavyweight Championship. I have no problem with Jey winning, and I think he has been great. He's been really, really good. I don't think it would be the worst thing to have Gunther win and keep his reign going. I don't love that it would be back-to-back big losses for him at WrestleMania. That is a story that you could tell next year, but for a guy like Gunther, who's supposed to be this dominant guy, eventually the big win needs to happen on that big stage. So I would keep Gunther as the champion if it were me right now. And this is not, I know there's a lot of people who are anti-Jey Uso right now. That's not what this is. I just feel like this is still Gunther's time as the world champion. World Tag Team titles on the line. The War Raiders defending against the New Day. The New Day heel turn has lost some steam a little bit. I think a title win here would jumpstart it a little bit, so I would give this to them. Since this segment is a little bit more on the fantasy booking side, though, I do think having Big E come out with the War Raiders, even though it doesn't totally fit, I do think Big E can have the intensity to be with them a little bit. That would be awesome if he can, and that would probably change my pick a little bit. So I think that it would be. I think it would be a fantastic match. Either way, I am going New Day in this spot. Also, in my scenario of Jey losing, I do think that coming out of Mania, having babyface Usos against heel New Day and a different dynamic to that rivalry that defined the tag division for a really long time, I think that would be a lot of fun to kind of fantasy book that one out. So that's the way that I would go with that. Next, Rey Mysterio Jr. against El Grande Americano. I think Rey wins and unmasks El Grande, and hopefully this leads to this being a bit more serious. And I hope that we find out a little bit more behind this, and that Gable actually found like a monster or something in Mexico. Because I thought the vignette that they did with him going out there, it was great until the jokey like more money, more money, more money. And so I thought there was some legs to that. And again, it's me projecting a little bit because like the comedy aspect of it, your mileage may vary on it, but I do think that I would prefer to have this have a little bit more heat to it than be a bit of a jokey one. And so I would hope that Ray winning does kind of spark something in it a little bit. Jade Cargill, not defending, just facing Naomi. I think Jade is an absolute superstar, and so I think you have to put her over here. Naomi has been doing some brilliant character work, but this is Jade's time right now. The U.S. Championship on the line, LA Knight against Jacob Fatu. I love both of these guys. I think that this is a very good setup for Fatu to go on a bit of a singles run, and LA Knight being ready to move up into the world title picture. So for me, it is Fatu getting it here in what probably amounts to a bit of a brawl. Tiffany Stratton against Charlotte Flair for the WWE Women's Championship. The build for this one has been ugly at times. I think you kill a lot of Tiffany's momentum if you have her lose to Charlotte here. I think this is a really important match for both of them. I think that if you can get the most out of these two in ring, the match will be incredible. And I think that will kind of help turn people back into the favor of both of these performers, quite frankly. So I do think that this would really, really help having these two just have an amazing match and Tiffany ending up coming out on the other side of it. While we're doing the what I would do, looking at the what I would have done category of it, and this isn't hindsight, I was saying this, go back to the Elimination Chamber lead up. I think it was a mistake to have Trish just be a 1 month thing. I think if you want Tiffany Stratton to be in basically her first babyface run, why not have Trish stick around? Obviously, quite the babyface herself, and I think kind of is uniquely positioned to understand some of the challenges that Tiffany Stratton may be having in this, going from being the attractive person who it is very easy to not like to trying to be the attractive wrestler who is better at wrestling than everyone and be the one that gets all the admiration, everything like that. I think Trish is uniquely qualified to do that, and so I think that they probably should have kept her around as a bit of a manager, figuratively and literally, with Tiffany Stratton. So just, my 2 cents there. And then the main event, Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Seth Rollins. I've been going back and forth on this one for a bit. It feels too obvious to have Heyman turn on Punk, but it also feels weird to have him involved in this way and then for him to not do anything. And so for me, I do think that while a lot of people are kind of pointing this way, I think eventually Heyman turns on both Reigns and Punk and forms a faction with Seth Rollins. If we're doing the fantasy booking thing, apparently Jeff Cobb's available and could be making his way to WWE. So I do think, like, I have been stating before, I'm not the biggest Seth Rollins guy when it comes to his promo ability and stuff like that. I think having a Paul Heyman would really take that character to the next level. You bring in a muscle like Jeff Cobb immediately to like really put that throws him into the main event picture right away if he's going out there and just dusting off Punk and Reigns. And it gets a kind of a new Paul Heyman guy faction going into the new wrestling year. Let's go into night 2. Io Sky, Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship. I can't be reasonable here. Io is one of my favorites right now. I have her winning this match. I haven't loved the build so far. I do believe that this match will be an absolute banger. I do think that one way you could go with this, if Io isn't going to win, is you have Asuka and Kairi Sane come back and cost Io the championship. So now you have an Io feud against Asuka and Kairi Sane that can take you to SummerSlam probably. And then you get the one-on-one championship feud with Rhea and Bianca in the first part of the new wrestling year. So you could get a couple of really good feuds out of it. But again, Io should forever and always have the championship belt. Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez against Bayley and Lyra Valkyria for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. I do think Liv is above these titles, but I also think that it is weird that Lyra is trying to establish the IC title right now, and then you would give her another championship belt. Ultimately, the women's title picture doesn't include Liv, and so this is a good way for her to elevate these belts and really push her up, push them up a little bit, keep her in a semi-prominent position, but also just letting the title thing kind of work itself out. AJ Styles against Logan Paul. Logan Paul is never going to get a win in the what would I do portion of this, so AJ Styles wins in a, pardon the pun, phenomenal match. Braun Breaker against Penta, against Finn Balor, against Dominic Mysterio for the Intercontinental Championship. I go Penta here, and then make sure Braun isn't the one taking the pin. In the I'm booking this scenario, I would again, Gunther retains the title for me. Braun, I think, would be a really good babyface to move into that, and then but then it's maybe a little bit too early for Braun to be winning the title. Maybe he's ultimately the one to take it off of Gunther, and he gets a couple of feuds to build up to that. But either way, you can kind of build to that there. So Braun elevates up. Penta gets to have the Intercontinental title and continue his rise a little bit. And then Dominic Mysterio and Finn Balor can go off and do their own thing. Sin City Street Fight with Damian Priest against Drew McIntyre. I like Priest a lot, but McIntyre is a world title caliber performer, and I just think he is on another level right now. I would go Drew in this spot and move him back towards a title picture. Again, if we're fantasy booking here, I know they're not everyone's cup of tea, but I do think that, like, part of the character for Drew McIntyre for a couple of years now has kind of him being a hypocrite. Like, everything he says is true, and you can see where he can believe it, but it is also very hypocritical. And so I think with him having a lot of trouble with factions, having his own faction would be kind of fun. And so I think the Gallus Boys, with Drew McIntyre as kind of their leader, I think adds an interesting wrinkle to what Drew McIntyre could be doing. And then in our main event, it is Cody Rhodes against John Cena for the WWE Undisputed Championship. So for this one, I do think the best thing is Cena winning the belt here. I think that Cody is getting very close to being overexposed as a babyface champion, and we're getting into LOL Cena territory here a little bit. And also, I feel like the Cena heel run needs a win here to start it off. Otherwise, it does kind of feel like it's maybe just a 1 month story. But since we're fantasy booking here, let's lay out what you could, in my mind, what you could do here with this whole thing. So, night one, at some point, you reveal that The Rock is there. He is in Las Vegas, and he is in John Cena's corner. I would say you could have him implement a no DQ thing, but I'm sure even without that being said, it's implied. And also, then we're getting too much into last year territory with everything like that. But I still say you have the odds against Cody Rhodes. Night two, Cody comes out, has his entrance, and then, like, hey, before we get going, you have someone in your corner, I have someone in mine. Glass breaks, out comes Stone Cold Steve Austin, and you do a bit of a thing. Cody gets the win. At some point, Rock and Austin have a bit of a stare down and an interaction. Then you have Cena and Rock go on a bit of a rampage for a little while, leading to a tag team match at SummerSlam with Cody and Austin against Rock and Cena. Rock Cena lose that match. Rock blames John Cena for it, turns on him. Then we get the Cena good guy run that we were all kind of hoping for, culminating with Cena winning his 17th championship and retiring as champion. He vacates the title, going into the Royal Rumble, which now becomes for the vacant WWE Championship. The Rock uses his board powers, like I said that I kind of thought he might do this year, uses his board powers or whatever, gets him into the number 31 spot in the Royal Rumble and wins it. Some way, shape, or form, Cody becomes the number one contender, and then he faces The Rock at WrestleMania 42. So, there, we just booked out the whole year for you guys with the world title picture. So, that's the what I would do portion of the WWE's biggest show of the year, WrestleMania. And that's going to do it for the show today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. As always, we're presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for that great Calgary swag. going to be back a little bit later with what I think they will do, WrestleMania predictions. As always, follow me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein, wherever you are consuming this. If you're listening, make sure you subscribe and leave a review. If you are watching, make sure, again, you hit that subscribe button and give this video a like, and let me know. I can't imagine I'm batting 1,000 on predictions that you agree with, so let me know in the comments what you think of all of this. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the hockey, enjoy the Mania, and we'll be talking again very soon. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.